All right, welcome once again, everybody. Such a pleasure to be with you here today, and as always, thank you so much for listening. I know there's a ton of podcasts out there, and I truly deeply appreciate everyone taking the time to stop by and listen here. And happy spring! It's a beautiful spring day where I am, so hopefully you're enjoying some beautiful, fantastic spring weather. It's funny. Every week I say this, and every week I just get goosebumps, and I'm tickled that I'm just so lucky to have just such awesome and amazing guests. And today is no different. I have with me a guest today. Her name is Lynn Bowman, who is going to blow your socks off and redefine what aging well is all about. And she's going to tell you how to do it with a little twist. And that twist is she's actually a type 2 diabetic. And so we're going to talk to her and see that it is possible, no matter what you got going on in your life, that you can still thrive. Lynn also, she is the author of the book Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. It is awesome to have you here, and I'm so excited to talk with you today.
This is big fun for me, Brad. You know that. I love it. So
I,
thank you.
and I'm just going to say right away, I know some people watch this on video, but you're 76 years old, and there's no way anybody in the world would have guessed this. I'm thinking 45, 46, almost my age. So you look absolutely spectacular. So you're living proof about this idea of aging well, or I use the term healthy aging, kind of the same thing. But tell us your story. So diabetes, and you and I were just talking off camera a little bit. Millions of Americans. I mentioned the number 33 million, but you said probably way more than that. Are
Right.
with type 2 diabetes. This is definitely I don't know if it's labeled this, but definitely a public health issue, a public health
It
emergency.
is. It is this is the real pandemic, and
Yeah.
it's huge, and people don't really understand what an overwhelming effect it has on our healthcare system, on families, on everything, because this huge number, and the diabetic number is just part of it. Chronic disease, which, and I'm going to define further, chronic disease that is preventable.
Yeah.
That's the shocking thing. And that's why I'm here today talking, because we can not only prevent it, but we can reverse it. Once you have it, we can control it. But it's all done with ice cream. No, I'm kidding. It's done.
Hey,
It's
never
done.
know.
Ice cream is part of it. Actually, if you know how to make your ice cream, you can have your ice cream. But it's, you have to know what you're dealing with. And that was the advantage I had, which was, and I think of it as an advantage, which is part of it. Let's be positive. I found out that I was going to be a type 2 diabetic when I had gestational diabetes, which is, it just means that some women, when they are pregnant, get thrown into this state of diabetes, and then it goes away with the pregnancy.
Mhm.
And but I was told at the time, you will most likely develop type 2 diabetes. I gained 60 pounds with my first pregnancy. My son was a 10-pound baby, and that was their clue. They said, okay, so although in that was so long ago now, ancient history, 1975, they said, after my baby was born, they said, oh, you probably were a gestational diabetic, but they didn't test me during the pregnancy. Now they automatically test women who are pregnant for type 2 diabetes and gestational diabetes. But so I knew that I should be looking for this. And also, a part of my story was that my mother had died when I was 18, and she had died of a chronic disease. So very prominent in my mind was that I did not want to be sick and die and leave my children. I was determined that I was going to do, I mean, my mom couldn't have helped it. She had a kidney disease, but I was just really driven by this need to be healthy for my children, and I became a single mother when my kids were quite small, 2, 3, and 4. And so I was on my own with them financially and every other way. So I
Can I
knew that
ask
I
real
had to
quick?
stand on my feet.
Yeah, can I ask real quick, Lynn? Was this
Sure.
your third born then when you developed the gestational diabetes?
No, firstborn.
First,
So,
oh, firstborn.
right,
Okay.
right,
So you
right.
went through your other two births then having type 2 diabetes.
Which is not a big deal,
Okay.
may I say. It's just that your numbers don't look good. You don't have, I mean, you're hungry, you're thirsty, but you are anyway because you're pregnant. So it's not that you have these symptoms and not that you're taken off your feet. It's just, oh gee, your numbers are bad. Your blood glucose is high. And so when I hit my 40s, I started asking my doc, could I be tested now? But when they go, oh no, you're not overweight, it's okay, you're young, it's all right. And finally, I had to really work at talking someone into testing me. And I finally got someone to give me a hemoglobin A1C, which is the test that tells you over a 3-month period what your average blood glucose is. And so it's a good indicator of what your situation is. And sure enough, I was over in diabetic territory. So they call it pre-diabetic. And by the way, over the years, these numbers have changed. At one point, 146 was the magic number. And over that, you were diabetic. Under that, you weren't. And then they changed it to 126. Why it's not 125 or 127, I don't know. But that's the number that has stuck in my mind. So somewhere in there is sort of, you're moving in a bad direction, let's say. So I learned early in my life, in my early 40s, that I was a type 2 diabetic, whether you call it borderline or whatever. I learned that this was a problem. So what they told you in those days was cut the carbs, try not to eat sugar, don't drink too much, get some exercise. That was the advice. And so I tried to do all those things, but I realized that was really not very complete information. And I didn't feel like it was probably very well studied. And also medical docs were not inclined to discuss, as many of you now know, anything having to do with diet. They just wasn't in their wheelhouse.
So did you kind of start your own self journey then, like journey of,
yeah.
how do I deal with this type 2 diabetes and
How do I stay healthy?
be healthy?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what did you discover and learn along the way then?
Well, I read everything I could get my hands on, which was not a great deal, which is why I wrote this book. I'm still bitter. There was nothing out there for someone like me. I mean, I didn't particularly care about all of the cellular stuff. What I wanted to know was, what do I do? What do I eat? What do I not eat? What do I, what exactly do I do to stay as healthy as I can stay?
And what did you come up with, or what did you find out? Yeah.
Well, and what they also would say was, well, you have to lose weight. You have to be at your minimum weight, which I now understand. Insulin, for example, the hormone that we all have, that is what is responsible for your blood glucose health, prevents you from losing weight. If you're female, and there are all kinds of things that make losing weight more of a challenge. Right. But I managed to keep my weight reasonable, and I did pretty well, and my numbers stayed, pretty good, not out of control, and I did fine. And then, of course, I was told that, like many of you may have been told, that this is a progressive disease. So that sounds like this door slamming shut, right? That this is just a thing that you just expect to get worse and get worse and get worse. And it sounds grim, but let's just be frank here. What happens when diabetes progresses is that you lose your circulation, your extremities start to die, and your internal organs begin to deteriorate. Your kidneys, your liver, you're dying from the inside out. From your blood has turned to this syrupy stuff full of glucose, and it no longer can keep your your organs healthy. So your
Was
life is.
real quick, Lynn, was there, so when you were first diagnosed, late 30s, early 40s, was there a prognosis like, oh, you have 5 years or 10 years or something like that? Or because obviously you've been dealing with this for over 30 years now, and you are absolutely thriving. I mean, you're the living proof example of healthy living right now.
I'm doing great. And I want to announce, and this, I don't know if this number will mean a lot to many of you. I hope if you're listening to this, you have had a hemoglobin A1C test. Everyone should get this test when they're over 40. If your numbers are good, it's like, fine, then you're good. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to be retested anytime soon. But if your numbers are edging up, then you need to be retested every year and you need to watch it. So what I want to tell you is that in the last 3 or 4 years, since I've really intensely been studying this, and I'm writing about this, and it's all in my book, my new book, I have managed to bring my hemoglobin A1C down from 7.3 to, as of this week, it is 6.3.
Okay.
So that's very close to normal.
Okay.
It's just over the normal mark. 5.96 is taking you into normal territory, taking you into non-diabetic territory. So physicians, my own included, would say, Lynn, nobody does that. You can't do it. I am here today with Coach Brad to tell you that you can do this. You can do this. And
was it healthy eating then? Exercise? How did you bring that number down?
Yes. And I'll tell you precisely what the healthy eating, and of course, my book is all about it. It's simple. It's not complicated. Yes, it's exercise. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be crazy exercise. It can just be walking. It can be house cleaning, going up and down stairs. Walking is great. Dancing, playing basketball, whatever you want to do is great, but you need to do it every day. And you need to do at least 20, 30 minutes every day. I also have a treadmill. I have a class that I take 3 days a week. You do it your way, but you need to move your buns, everybody. So that's one. You need to eat carefully, and we'll go into specifics on what that is. But here's the little dirty secret. The way you need to eat is exactly the way everybody needs to eat, including heart patients, non-heart patients. It's the formula for staying healthy. Hello, that's all it is. And yet, this is the big secret. This is the thing that everybody's arguing about. Nobody seems to understand, and your doctor won't. And I have been sent to dietitians, by the way, as some of you may have. And if you walk into a dietitian's office and she weighs 250, 300 pounds, I'm going to suggest to you that this is not where you need to get your information. And I don't mean to sound ugly there, but you need to get information from people who have successfully figured out how to eat. And I will raise my hand, and I think that's me, and there are others. But it's not complicated. I don't count calories, and I don't suggest that you count calories. I don't journal. If you like that, great. I don't measure a lot of things because I'm just impatient and messy. I don't. But it's good common sense, really, about food. And tell me when you're ready for specifics, because we can get very specific about it.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce your book again real quick, and then I want to jump to one other question, then we'll get to the specifics. But again, anyone listening, Lynn's book is Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them. You can find this book at lynnbowman.com. I'll put a link to that website in my podcast description.
Great.
She's also got a couple other books on there you can check out. Lynn, before we get into specifics, let me ask you also, because I kind of want to segment a little into this idea of aging well, which you've really done well. So do you have any health issues like related to arthritis or oh gosh, what's the one?
I have carpal tunnel. That's my big one. which
Carpal
is
tunnel. Okay.
a lot of us who have spent our lives at keyboards struggle with this. And yeah, it's a thing. But Brad, the deal
Anything
is
else?
the eating this way and doing this kind of exercise is the answer for almost everything
Yeah.
that ails us.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost everything.
And let me ask you one more thing. So you're obviously quite motivated. What motivates you to do this? Because a lot of people have heard this before, but they're still on the couch and they can't quite get over that hump to get started. How did you do that? How did you get started with all this and then keep it going for so many years?
Well, I started, as I said, because I was a mother, single mother, 3 kids. I was determined that I was going to feed them well, feed myself well. I was going to stay healthy. And I knew back then, we were all wearing calico in those days in the 70s and, back to the land. And so I wasn't alone in my keen interest in where food really came from and what good food was. I also spent time in France. I lived in France for a while and
Parlez-vous français?
oui. And so you can't spend time in Italy or France and not fall in love with food. I mean, it's so much a part of the
I've
culture.
heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also it's such an interesting thing in the United States. I am from Los Angeles originally. So I come from a place where I grew up seeing buildings shaped like donuts and hot dogs. It's where McDonald's came from, right?
Yeah.
So I have this kind of weird lens on food, which as a country, we have fallen into the abyss of fast food, fad food too, but fast food. And that's a big part of the problem. People, I talk to young parents, and we have 2 generations of kids now that have grown up eating with their hands, no utensils. They eat out of a bag. They eat out of a box.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong also. I mean, we've heard a lot about childhood obesity as a major health issue now, but
Huge.
also probably juvenile diabetes. I mean,
We used to call it juvenile diabetes, which juvenile diabetes was type 1 diabetes, which
okay.
is associated with genetics. It's also now more associated with trauma. Either, physical trauma of some kind will throw a child sometimes into diabetes. It's also associated with drinking cow's milk.
I did not know
And
that. So the regular cow's milk you buy at the grocery store.
right. And we are a country full, and if we're talking about people over 50, let's say, we grew up with TV and magazines everywhere we looked telling us that milk made a body strong, that Wheaties was the breakfast of champions. We grew up with this food industry, big food, telling us to eat a certain way. And it was, we bought it hook, line, and sinker, and it made us sick. It's still making us sick.
It's still sick. So Lynn, your book again, Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them, at lynnbowman.com. So let's get into some of the specifics then. How do you eat?
Okay, number 1. Okay, here's the thing that is scary to most people, but I'm here to tell you it's not scary. No sugar, absolutely no sugar. And
you're talking about the processed sugar, right?
I'm talking about cane sugar. Even they call it natural sugar. I don't eat sugar. I eat whole food, plant-based, not too much. I do eat some fish. I would not be opposed if someone served me meat and it was pasture raised, healthy, or game. I would eat some. I haven't in a couple of years. I don't buy it. We don't eat meat at home, but we do eat some fish, salmon particularly, and some shrimp. We live at the coast. We can get good fish, so we eat that. But your diet needs to be primarily plants real plants, whole food. And I don't eat dairy, except I will eat sheep's milk cheese and goat's milk cheese. And I will eat some carefully selected yogurt, a little bit, but no sugar. I don't eat flour. I don't eat wheat flour. The exception to that is I live where people are now growing wheat from heritage seed, and these are small farms. And so they will make, for example, a sourdough bread with walnuts, which I have in the book, which is just divine. But you have a piece of that and you know you've had a piece of bread, and that's all. I don't eat white bread or white flour. It's because chemically, it's just like eating sugar. If you know what I mean by glycemic index, most people now are familiar with that. It's how your body responds to sugars in food, and how your body responds glucose wise to the food that you eat.
Let me ask you this one. How many times a day do you eat? Do you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or do you snack?
Yeah.
Or what's your like? So we know what you eat. How? Tell us about the how.
The how is really interesting, and this is, oh, man, I'm reading about this, watching about this all the time. It's so interesting. It's not new, it's old, but the thing that really has put me back in this totally normal range for my blood sugar is what is now being called intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
All it means is you skip a meal. You don't eat all day. You don't need to eat all day. And you can schedule it in a way that works for your life. In my life, I generally eat some breakfast at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And then I eat a meal at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And I'm done.
And then that's it for the day.
That's it for the day. And most of the people who are now longevity experts, and they're calling them the MDs or PhDs who are calling themselves longevity experts, they will tell you this: to eat less frequently, to skip a meal. And they will also tell you that if you want to skip a meal all day and just not eat one day a week or a month or whatever, that's fine. I was always told by the medical establishment that I should be eating all the time as a diabetic. You need to eat all the time to keep your blood sugar even so that you don't spike it. Well, that didn't work, but not eating works great. It's a miracle. It's amazing. And it adds to your energy. And here's one of my new favorite words, Brad, which I'm so pleased with. I love this. And if you look it up, it's going to take you on some interesting paths. Autophagy.
Autophagy. Okay. Tell us what that is.
It literally translates as eating yourself. Okay. But what it means is your cells. Oh, and we could talk about mitochondria too, because I'm loving that. I'm researching that all the time. But autophagy means that your cells have this extraordinary ability to cleanse themselves, to groom themselves, but only if you stop stuffing food in your mouth. You need to empty your system of food long enough for your cells to go, okay, well, she's done, thank goodness, so we can do our cleanup stuff. And I liken it to the road crew at night when the traffic is gone and the road is quiet. The guys with the shovels and the brooms and the hoses come out and they clean that road and they get it all ready for the traffic that's going to come tomorrow. Yeah. Your body needs you to shut the food system down so that you can do this cleansing, autophagy. And it's a miracle. Literally, it gets rid of the bad cells and the pieces. And actually, and I'm now learning that your body will rebuild muscle and bone from bits. It recycles old cells that are no longer useful in their previous form if you let it. And the way you let your body do this is to stop eating for a while. And so that 12 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, do the math. For me, you know, I'm done eating at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then I don't eat again until 9 in the morning. So you do the math. And you know, that doesn't always work because you have a lunch date or you have a dinner. Our friends know if we're going to have dinner, it'll be early, right? It's we're going to be the first people in the restaurant because you don't want to eat at night. Your body really does not want, once it's dark, once your circadian rhythm is telling you that the day is waning, the day is over, you need to stop eating because your body is not real, and it'll adapt to you. Your body is amazing. And whatever crazy thing you're doing, you know, your body finds a way. Well, she's, you know, running a marathon, or well, she's sitting up all night eating, or whatever it is, your body will accommodate you. But maybe it's time you accommodated your body and accommodated this process of autophagy that you are equipped to do automatically if you will just stop eating for a while.
Yeah. So I want to be clear again for anyone listening right now that Lynn is 76 years old. She does have type 2 diabetes to this day, but it's very well managed and in control. And she is an absolute shining example of healthy living and thriving in spite of a pretty serious medical condition like type 2 diabetes. So if you're listening, again, I always emphasize this, wherever you are, if you have a medical condition right now, there is a way out of it through this idea. When you're saying your determination in the beginning to be healthy,
Yes.
you taught yourself how to eat properly and what to eat. And then of course, exercise or movement, it played a big part of it. How are you doing overall today, Lynn, compared to where you were, say, 30 years ago when you first learned about all this?
Well, I'm 30 years older.
Yeah, I wouldn't know though.
Which, okay, but right there, that's huge. I'm loving it. Every day that I wake up breathing is a good day. And it's a day that you're not guaranteed, you know. But the thing is, so many of us, we are getting older. Many of us are getting older. And I'm the first, boomer year. I was born in 1946. So there is going to be this big cohort of us out there. And I want to be the one on my feet. You know, I don't want to be the one who has to be cared for by the people around me, who is unable to contribute in many ways. I'm a grandma, which I absolutely love. I plan to be an active part of my grandchildren's life and have so far. I'm looking forward to great grandchildren one of these days.
And I know you mentioned that you have a new grandson that is 6 months old, so congratulations on that. Let me ask you this. So somebody is listening and they're 55, 60, and they're saying, you know what, I'm too old, it's too late to do anything about this. You know, what would you tell that person?
Well, do I have to keep it clean?
Well, PG, I guess. PG 13.
Okay, I would say, how about this? Fiddle dee dee. I mean, you know, if you are depressed, if you are sleeping too much, if you're doing all those things, a lot of the solution is in food and movement.
That's it right there. Actually, you just hit the nail on the head.
You know, depression, you can treat it with food and movement more effectively in many cases than you can with any kind of medication. If you are feeling down, if you are depressed, get help by all means, but help yourself too by trying these natural ways to heal yourself. And I want to say right away too, people automatically assume that I'm talking about deprivation of some kind because I've been talking about not eating for a few hours.
It's actually not deprivation though.
If you will eat this way, the food is more beautiful, more delicious, more interesting than the food that you've been eating. If you've been eating fast food, if you've been eating beige, white bread and brown meat, what I want you to do is discover this whole great world of more plant-based food. It's great food. It just takes a little more experimentation. You have to go in the kitchen. Somebody has to chop something. Somebody has to go to the farmer's market, or to the fruit stand, or to the produce section of your grocery store, and buy some colorful, wonderful, real whole foods. And then you have to make something with it. But it's easy. And the reason I titled the book, by the way, for diabetics and the people who love them, is because I see so many people segregating themselves at meals. It's like grandma's eating one thing, Junior's eating something else, mom is in the kitchen, she's eating something, dad is in the other room because he just wants his pizza and that's all he cares about. I don't want that. I want us eating at the table together. It's a magic time for friends and family, and we've kind of let go of some of that. So
I get your point. Actually, now that you mentioned that, I know of a family, actually, I've seen here a couple times over the past year, that does that. The mom or the dad, depending, eats one thing while the kids and the rest of
yeah,
the family eats something else, and it does divide and segregate the house a little bit. Again, the book is Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them. LynnBowman.com. She's actually got several books there. Lynn, for folks listening, again, I want to highlight one more real critical thing that you have clearly demonstrated in your life. That I say this a lot, but I want to make sure folks understand it. You hit on a key just a moment ago. One of the secret sauces is food and movement. Those are the tangible things. What you've displayed in your life, which is what I want to make sure people understand, are the intangibles, the things that you can't see. You were clearly determined to live this healthy lifestyle. You were absolutely committed to it. And you had, I call it your glue that holds all this together. You wanted to be healthy for your grandchildren.
yeah,
And so now when you have those, I'll call it those five things, the tangibles, the food, and the movement, with those three intangibles, the determination, the commitment, and the focus, you get to where you are now. So, and Lynn, I know I asked you this earlier, but other than carpal tunnel, you're not dealing with, you don't have neuropathy, which is common among your age group. You don't have arthritis, which is very common among your age group. A host of other ailments, a high blood pressure. You don't have any of that, right?
nope.
Yeah. So again, and Lynn, you can attest to this too. I always say this for anyone that is listening. It's great anytime you want to start this journey, what you've done, when you were blessed and fortunate and smart enough to start this in your late 30s, early 40s. And for someone in their 60s and 70s, I would definitely say start this journey if you haven't already.
Never too late. Never too late. No.
However, I really want to emphasize, if you're listening to this now, a key to this aging well and healthy aging is when you start.
Yeah.
Much better to start when you did in your early, the sooner you start, the better, I guess, is what I want to say.
But I have seen great turnarounds in people who start in their 50s, 60s, even early 70s. You will get results, and it can feel miraculous. One of the ways you'll see it, for example, is in sleep. And I talk about sleep.
We haven't even talked
Because,
about sleep. Yeah.
yeah, these things are all related, Brad. Your movement, your food, your sleep, all related. It's all the same system. And if you are doing what I suggest, and by the way, people go, wait a minute, brownies, and you said no sugar. What is that? What I talk about in the book is all of the ways that you can use other things to sweeten, and the newer sweeteners that are out there that are quite good that you may not have tried. I mean, a lot of us have, and I've done experiments with this. When you tell people that something is sugar-free, the response you get is, oh, no, thanks.
Yeah.
The assumption is it's not going to be good. But there are new sugar substitutes out there that are fantastic. They're really great. And I would encourage you to try them. My brownies, in case you were wondering, and I hope you were, are made with nut butter, pumpkin, egg or egg substitute, baking soda, and cocoa. I think that's it. and they are delicious, but they don't have any sugar, and they don't have any added oil, and they don't have any flour. And so they're a meal. And so the food in the book is all like that. It's familiar, and you go, wow, great brownie, but I just make it a different way than you may be accustomed to making some of these things.
Are these all your own recipes then? Did you?
They're my own recipes. I've a couple of them I snagged from people. You know how we women are. It's like, I need that one for my book. And so, yeah, I've had a couple contributed, but most of it is what I've been doing for all these years. And I kept fine tuning it because I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want to not have good food to eat, right? And so I had to do it myself because nobody else was making really good sugar-free stuff. There are donuts, there are pies and cakes in the book. There are also soups and casseroles and other, savory things for you to eat. But it's all simple, very simple.
I want to ask you a question, Lynn, and then I want to answer it also, but I want to hear what you say first. If someone is struggling through all of this and so much information out there and confusion, what is the first thing they should do, or the very first place they should start, or what is the very first thing you would tell them?
Well, to buy my book, Brad. Hello, right? But and I promise you, it's fun. It's a good read because it's got some stories in it, and I wrote it as if we were sitting at the kitchen table together, and I was talking to you straight ahead about what we all need to do, because that's what it is. What we all
I'm going to see your buy the book, and I'm going to raise you one, because this is what I had to do in my life that I want to share with folks. Absolutely buy the book, lynnbowman.com, Brownies for Breakfast. But then don't just buy it, open it up and read it and
do it.
And set this challenge. This is what I had to do for myself, and it worked so well. Set a challenge for yourself if you're listening to this now. One new recipe from the book a week.
Yes.
Learn one new recipe a week and do that for like even 4 weeks. And you've got 4 recipes, and you will be amazed how your understanding of food and how to eat and what to eat, how it starts to change. And we haven't talked a lot about mindset, but mindset is a big role in this. And when you start to learn one new recipe a week, your mindset starts to shift and get reprogrammed as well. So again, anyone listening, yes, absolutely buy the book, Brownies for Breakfast, at lynnbowman.com. I'll put a link on my podcast description. But one recipe a week. I want, if you're listening, contact Lynn, contact me. I want you to say, hey, this is the recipe I learned this week. So that's a great way to do it.
I love hearing from people. And so on my website, there's a place to sign up, and I will not annoy you with emails, but when I come up with something new that I think you'll love, I'll send it out, a new recipe, whatever. And I love hearing from people and getting pictures when they actually make the recipes, and they're all so simple. I mean, literally some of them 3-4 ingredients. And I'll give you one small example: mushroom soup. Okay. Mushrooms are one of the best foods you can eat. They really are magic health-wise. They're great food. They're not expensive. If you buy just the ordinary simini mushrooms, white mushrooms in the grocery store. But mushroom soup is nothing more than mushrooms, onions, a little bit of olive oil, and some broth. I use vegetable broth. And so you saute, and then you cook it for an hour, and then you put it in your blender. But in the book, I give you the trick, which is a little bit of whiskey after it.
Hey, yeah. Hey, there you go.
And I'm telling you, and this is particularly a recipe that for some reason men seem to really love. Don't know why. Maybe the ones that have the whiskey in their cabinet. But it's so good and so simple, and there's no flour in it. It's all onions are health food. Onions are brilliant food. And so these are the kinds of, and then you have this sauce. If you don't want to just eat the mushroom soup, then you can make a casserole. Remember all the times that your mom made casseroles with the can of mushroom soup?
And I didn't like it. Yeah.
No. Well, make your own mushroom soup. It's fabulous. It's so good. And I think I tell the story in the book, actually, of a friend of mine, an attorney, who decided that that was the recipe he was going to start with, and he made it. And he said, Lynn, I have to be honest with you. I didn't feel great afterwards because I ate it all. It was so good. I ate the
Too
whole
much then.
recipe. It's like, okay, next time
That's
have
the
some
opposite
friends
effect. Yeah.
over, right? But I want you all to discover how yummy stuff is when it's the simple, ordinary. I'm not a chef, and I'm not about bringing in ingredients from all over the world. And I'm about putting something good on the table fast and making it easy and making it accessible and inexpensive. And don't tell me that food is too expensive unless you are shopping in produce. If you go and buy produce, it may have gone up a bit, but not like meat, not like a lot of the other foods in the store. If you stop buying processed foods. Also, people ask me about salt. Can we talk about salt for a minute?
Yeah, go for it.
If you are not eating processed food, you are not going to need to worry about salt. You can sprinkle salt on whatever you want. And I recommend truffle salt. It's my favorite little tricks. There are lots of smoky salts that you can buy that you will not believe how just adding that little bit of smoky salt elevates this soup or this dish to all of a sudden, wow, so good. But you don't need to worry about salt if you're not eating processed food, if you're not eating pizza and chips and stuff like that, because you have no idea unless you're reading the labels, and you probably are not, but I want you to. If you read those labels, you will be stunned at how much sodium and sugar is in every processed food that you buy. Literally everyone.
I've learned to read labels several years ago, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Again, the book is Brownies for Breakfast, lynnbowman.com. Lynn, unfortunately, I hate to do this. We're running out of time.
Oh, no.
We could go on for a while. I know. Any final take-home words or message for anyone listening today that you haven't said already?
Yeah, here's one. I want you to eat joyfully. I want you
By that.
to love your food, eat with friends, make a friend, go find somebody to come and eat your mushroom soup with you so you don't eat too much.
Maybe I'll
And
start a Be Well ice cream podcast.
there
Friends.
you go. And there's a recipe for gelato in the book that is amazing. It's like 3 ingredients and it's healthy. It's wonderful for you. So eat joyfully and eat well.
Okay, there you have it. Eat joyfully, eat well. Everyone, again, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. I hope you've gotten something out of this podcast. There's a lot of good stuff. Again, some basics: food, movement, determination, commitment, things of those nature. Brownies for Breakfast, lynnbowman.com. Lynn, been a true pleasure having you on the podcast today. I sure appreciate you being here. And again, we talked before the show. I'd love to have you back. There's other stuff we can talk about. There's always
you're a great sport to let me pick at you and all your.
Oh, sure. I absolutely enjoy it. So again, everyone, thank you so much for being here. And until next time, this is Coach Brad saying, be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.